Wasabi wallet. Unfairly private.
What's up, everyone? I'm Ben with the BTC Sessions. Today I sat down with Mario Gibney from Blockstream. He's the head of customer service there, and he's also part of the Unhashed Podcast. And so we got to talking about Bitcoin fees. And we dove into the dynamics of how fees actually work and their function, and the eventuality of Bitcoin being fully dependent on fees to pay the miners. We got into the dynamics of dealing with secondary layers or side chains, so things like Lightning Network and Liquid Network, about how they impact fees and how they can help alleviate and allow people to transact for cheaper fees and more quickly. And then we even got a little bit cosmic and started talking about interplanetary and off-planet Bitcoin and how that might work and how fees play into that. So it was a really fun conversation. I hope you guys really enjoy it. And this is Sips with Sessions.
Hodl the Bitcoin.
Now, before we start the show, of course, shout out to sponsors of the show, LEDN.io. This is where you can use your Bitcoin for a variety of different services. They've got their Bitcoin-backed loans where you can use your Bitcoin as collateral to get a Canadian or US dollar loan. So if you're in a pinch, you need dollars and you don't want to sell your Bitcoin because that's taxable and because you're worried about buying back in at a higher price point, that could be for you. They also have Bitcoin USDC savings accounts with interest rates of up to 11.7% annually paid monthly. And they've got their B2X offering that uses the same loan mechanism to instantly buy more Bitcoin, effectively doubling your Bitcoin on the spot. If you want to check them out, there's a link in the show notes down below. And if you click that link and opt to get a loan, well, they'll give you $25 worth of USDC right into your savings account right away. Now, up next, we have our friends at Crypto Cloaks. If you haven't heard of these guys, you got to check them out. Bunch of awesome Bitcoiners with 3D printers pumping out incredible swag. Now, I have my Bitcoin custom node case made from them. I've got my Bitcoin coaster always ready for Sips with Sessions, and they've got a ton of other cool stuff. Of course, the Honey Badger to store your hardware wallets in. The Bitcoin grenades are great for gifts. You can put open dimes in them, sticker packs, covers for your hardware wallets. As I said before, node cases. They've even got night lights, and they're constantly pumping out more and more gear. Check them out. Head to cryptocloaks.com and use code BTC Sessions, all one word, for 5% off at checkout. And finally, we have the Cobo Vault. Now, this has quickly moved into my regularly rotated hardware wallets that I use almost on a daily basis. I love this thing, particularly because it's completely air-gapped, meaning you never plug the thing into an internet-connected device. No phone, no computer. It's just all done through QR codes. That keeps the seed or the backup to your wallet safe. Now, their firmware is open source. They've got secure element on the thing. And of course, they've got their Bitcoin only firmware, which is interoperable with a variety of different wallets. You don't have to use their dedicated app. If you like, you can use things like Bitcoin Core or Electrum, or my go-to desktop wallet, Wasabi, or my go-to mobile wallet, Blue Wallet. So be sure to check them out. There's a link in the show notes down below if you want to grab one. And just for reference, I'm using the Cobo Vault Pro, which has the fingerprint scanner and has the rechargeable battery. So be sure to check them out. And by the way, they're doing giveaways. They continue to do giveaways on my show throughout the end of November. So if you want to win a Cobo Tablet Plus, which is a steel seed plate, which can hold the backup to any Bitcoin wallet you may have, all you need to do, retweet the show, tag myself and Cobo in that retweet, and just let us know why you want one. And with that, let's dive into the interview. We are recording. Welcome, friend. How are you?
Oh, great. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, Mario, I'm always careful with last names because there's always a curveball. But
it's not that hard to pronounce.
Gibney, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Because you never know. Somebody might. It's actually Gibney or something. But Yeah, okay. I'm always super self-conscious about trying to say
You nailed it. Yeah.
I haven't. Okay, perfect. So Mario Gibney, you do some work with Blockstream, correct, friend?
Yeah, I'm customer support lead there.
Awesome. And I guess before we get into anything, what you sipping on?
This morning I'm sipping on Soylent, which is what I often have for breakfast nowadays. Because it's just a wholly nutritious drink. I'm sure all our Bitcoiner friends out there will be very approving of it. Yeah, it's great. You just mix powder with water, and then you have everything the body needs. It's
literally everything.
in theory, yeah. Like you look at according to their nutritional labels, and we all know they could never make a mistake or lie there.
Yes. Is it good?
I like it. I do actually like it a lot. Yeah, and it's like I think it's probably not healthy to have too much of this stuff. Like there are people who apparently lived on only it. I wouldn't recommend doing that. But
probably better. I'm drinking coffee. That can't be any better than whey.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think coffee is supposed to be a meal supplement, though. I mean, maybe it is for some people, but
no.
I don't know. Wait,
I do want to highlight my mug though. This is my shitcoin mug, and every time I pull it out, I find it hilarious because it's like this wonderful reminder of how many projects have come seeking relevance and then disappeared into the ether.
You're the first person I've met who's had a matching coffee mug and toilet paper.
Yes, yeah, you saw that. Bill Fodel.
Yeah, well, no, that's our podcast. We made that. So the Bill Fodel guys, I do the Unhashed. Oh, I can shill them. The Unhashed Podcast is a show I do with them, and so if you look on the toilet paper, that's I'll go on there.
Is it weird that I value the toilet paper more than I value the underlying token, in that I don't even want to wipe my ass with it because I find it funny?
I think the entire point is that it's more valuable as toilet paper than as light paper. But that's great. I mean, if you want to keep it, you can.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Special occasion.
You can put it on a shelf somewhere and show it off to your guests.
Maybe I'll save it for occasions where I make high time preference diet decisions.
There you go. I forgot we made those like I think a year ago or something like that, and shockingly they didn't sell. But they've been a fun marketing gimmick. Like people seem to think they're hilarious when they get them.
Oh yeah, I was over the moon, like literally when I got it. Surprised, very excited about it. But as much as I'd love to continue talking about wiping my ass with you, I wanted to chat to you today about Bitcoin fees. And the reason behind this is I saw and kind of partook in a little bit of an exchange on Twitter, and there was a discussion around the Bitcoin fees and potentially a market forming to a point where 1 Satoshi per byte may never clear, and the mempool just never clears. But before we dive like deep into that realm of thought, what I did want to do is, because there tends to be some newbies that watch this channel, and they may not have like a full grasp on even just Bitcoin fees in general, some of the things around them and how they're calculated, things like that. So maybe we could start and just maybe bounce off each other wherever we want to chime in back and forth, but let's start with Bitcoin fees, how they work in the first place, how they're calculated, how a fee kind of is decided.
Sure. So when you send a transaction in Bitcoin, it needs to get included in a block before it's actually confirmed and is sent. Blocks are created by miners. On average, every 10 minutes, there's a new block, which can be, the upper limit now is roughly 2.2 megabytes. And you need to include a fee with your transaction in order for a miner to include it in the block. Now, what happens is there's limited space. So if there's a period of high traffic where many people are trying to get transactions confirmed, they cannot all fit inside a given block. So what happens is the senders of the transaction bid higher fees against each other, because the miners get to keep any fees from the transactions included in the block they create. So they're, you know, exceptions aside, they're going to always choose the fees that, or the transactions that include the most fees per byte, basically. The highest fees depending on how much space the transaction takes up. So periods of high traffic, you'll generally pay higher fees. Now, if you're like an everyday user and you send just using your wallet, most good wallets will calculate fees for you and will give you an estimate, like, low, medium, or slow, medium, fast. If you've used Bitcoin long enough, you'll know that those aren't always accurate because you can't predict the future. You don't know, like, next 6 hours there might be tons of traffic, or you might set a low fee and it confirms really quickly because there's a burst of blocks found. That's where they come from.
Cool. And obviously, well, I guess not obviously to newcomers, but fees are not in any way related to the value sent, but rather on the amount of space computationally that will be taken up in a block.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but wallets are not always the greatest at predicting that kind of stuff. How do wallets often come to a conclusion as to what they estimate the best fee to be?
Okay. Well, yeah, first of all, I agree that there's, I think it's pretty universally agreed upon that there's a lot of room for improvement in fee estimation software. I mean, the right now, I mean, I wish I'd known this question in advance. I would have looked into it a bit more deeply. I mean, I don't know the precise mechanics behind it, but you essentially look at the like a node's mempool, that is like how many transactions there are in a backlog, and you can make a guess based on expected blocks being created over the next time period. And if you have, if you create a transaction with 30 satoshis per byte, you can be like, okay, well, there's 10 blocks worth of transactions paying higher fees than that. So you're probably going to have to wait at least like 2 hours, for example. So they basically take data of, see the backlog, how many transactions are waiting to be confirmed, how much they are paying in fees, and they'll do the best estimate. It's not, like there's definitely room for improvement there. If you want to do it manually yourself, there's a great website called whatthefee.io. And what it does is it's got this chart where it kind of breaks down into different percentages. Like, if you want your transaction confirmed the next hour with 95% certainty, it recommends, this level of fees. If you want like a 50% chance your transaction confirms in the next 6 hours, recommends this level of fees. And that tends to be quite a bit more accurate. I can probably say this, where I've actually been talking with one of our designers at Blockstream. We've come up with what I think is a kind of a new way to a new user interface for providing more precise fee levels for the wallet. And that should be coming out relatively soonish on Blockstream Green. So I'm pretty excited to have that in users' hands.
Awesome. How has Blockstream Green been going? Obviously you guys have the desktop version now. How has that been received by everybody?
I mean, the new UI, which I guess we launched, originally it was called Green Address. So when I joined back in early 2018, that's what it was. And I guess it would have been I think it's spring 2019, we launched Blockstream Green, which was the UI overhaul and, the UX overhaul. And that was very well received. People, Green Address, if you've ever used the original app, it's still available if you look it up on GitHub. It's pretty old school. Actually, I think the first time you and I chatted was when you did an instructional video for Green.
Yes. Yeah. Back when it had just launched, and there were, I'm trying to recall, I don't think that there was yet liquid functionality in it.
That's correct. Yeah. Liquid didn't come till later.
Yeah. But yeah, I really enjoy it. Like I find it, it's got advanced features in it, but they're not in your face enough to confuse a newcomer, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys also recently launched Aqua, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So we're going to divide it between like Aqua's going to be the more noob friendly wallet. It's very stripped down and basic and simple. It's a single wallet, handles Bitcoin or liquid assets, and it's supposed to be. It's kind of the one designed for your grandma. Really really basic, none of the frills, and then power users can be over to Blockstream Green, which has all the bells and whistles. And we're kind of happy now that Aqua's launched a lot of the because it's the same team that builds both apps. So now we're going to be able to shift focus back over to Green again and add a bunch of features. I know people have been waiting for a while. Like coin control is a big one that has kind of become a must-have for the power users, and so we're going to get that out soon.
Cool. I'm on a bit of a segue here, but or a bit of a tangent, but. Is there any chance that you guys will be looking at implementing pay join?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something we're immediately working on, I don't think, but that's definitely something we intend to add. It's on the list of things that there's always so much to do, right? Yeah. And the guys building Blockstream Green are also like now we got Aqua and Green. Like PayJoin, I can't give a timeline, but I know that's something we want to have eventually.
It's on the radar. Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be ideal. Like, for people who don't know PayJoin, it's essentially like it came out of this attempt to make a minimalist coin join. And once that that's more widespread, like it's going to be a massive boost to privacy without like user hassle, which is huge. Like, I mean, coin joins are cool, but the fact that you actually have to kind of set it up and divide your coins in smaller amounts and go through this extra process is kind of a big hindrance. Like the great thing about PayJoin is, once that's more broadly developed, you'll have people, paying each other using this protocol, and there's no burden of convenience provided both parties are online. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that working.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. I guess this is quite relevant given that recently we had BitMEX cracked down upon, and then we had Chainalysis label coins from BitMEX as high risk. And I saw a couple tweets the other day from people. Now I can't fully confirm if this was the reason, but somebody who had taken their BitMEX coins, put them on Coinbase, and then tried to withdraw and was not allowed to. So you have instances like that where having a more broadened, almost like it's I want to say taint, but it's not really taint because it just kind of obfuscates exactly what's going on without looking strange to an outsider. Is that?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, because it's I think they call this a stenographic transaction. I think that was the term, which is you want something that enhances your coin's privacy without being obvious that it is doing that. The problem with BitMEX is that everyone knows which are the BitMEX addresses. Like, you don't really want that to be the situation. It's the same thing with most coin joins as they're implemented today. You can look at that transaction on a block report, like, oh, it's a coin join. With pay to endpoint, that won't be the case. It will look identical to a regular payment with two inputs, two outputs. So I guess a stenographic transaction is a transaction that manages to enhance your privacy, and isn't clearly doing so. So I guess it's kind of meta privacy, I guess I was calling it before I was correct on the term, but yeah.
Huh, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a big boost. Yeah.
So I'm gonna reel it a little bit back in towards the fee aspect that we're talking about. So obviously there's a number of things that users can do to try and minimize the fees that they're paying, given I guess recent upgrades to the Bitcoin protocol in the past few years. So things like using SegWit enabled wallets, which most are SegWit enabled, but there's wrapped SegWit and then there's Bech32 addresses. Would you want to tackle just describing the difference between a SegWit and like a Bech32?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, well, Bech32 is native SegWit, and wrapped SegWit it uses the I don't know I don't know how much detail we want to get into. I mean, it's essentially, it uses the pay to script hash format um, to take advantage of SegWit, but because it's not, I guess because it's nested inside P2SH, it doesn't take full advantage of it. So if you use, wrapped SegWit, you'll get like, something like 30% of the gains or something like that. And then if you use native SegWit, you get more gains. And this essentially makes it doesn't make the transaction actually smaller, but it makes miners treat the transaction as smaller, which means that whatever fees you pay, because fees are paid based on the amount of space the transaction takes up, it will, you can view it as, it essentially makes the transaction cheaper to broadcast.
Yeah. And for anybody watching that's unsure to tell if you're using wrapped SegWit or native SegWit, wrapped addresses would start with a 3, and Bec32 or native SegWit start with BC1. BC1 will save you more on fees. And actually, the Blockstream, blockstream.info will actually show you, if you look up a transaction, if what type of transaction it was and how much you could have saved on fees had you used Bec32 or native SegWit, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Well, we have a little, I guess it's a little privacy analysis section, which will, or oh no, that's a bit separate. But yeah, no. Well, like if you look at a transaction on the Block Explorer, yeah, it will tell you, how much you saved if you use SegWit, how much you saved if you used native SegWit, how much you could have saved if you didn't. It's also worth noting that the savings, the reduced fees, they don't come from sending to that type of address. They come to spending from that type of address. So in order to take advantage of these cheaper address types, you need to set up your wallet to receive to that type of address. Because if I'm spending from like, a regular, pay to public key hash address, I'm still going to pay the regular fee amount, even if I'm sending to a Bec32 address. Yeah. So you're going to want a wallet, that accepts SegWit format, at least one of those two formats. Yeah.
And so I guess, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong regarding this. So people that are confused that in regards to why it's not cheaper to send to a Bec32, but rather to send from, it's because the fees that you pay are associated with kind of the state of the coins or the UTXOs that you've received and where they've come from. And so if you've received Bitcoin from if you've received Bitcoin from a legacy address, one starting from a 1, then that UTXO effectively, in order to send it at that point, then it essentially is going to take up more block space to send it, even in concert with other ones. Or how exactly would you best describe? It's more of an implication of where the coins were in the previous transaction, or like the state of the how would you word that?
Okay, so when you're sending coins to an address, what an address is it is a set of instructions for how that coin can be spent again. And in the vast majority of situations, the way that coin gets spent again is by providing a digital signature. And that's basically what Bitcoin wallets do, is you have a private key, and that private key can generate a bunch of signatures that allow you to spend funds that have been sent to addresses generated by that wallet. Now, the signature is the largest part of a transaction. It's the largest in size. I forget exactly what the portion is, but it's generally like it's over 50% of the transaction's data is just the digital signature. Now, SegWit addresses allow you to include your signature in a part of, in a way that doesn't take up as much space. What SegWit is called segregated witness, which just means the witness data, that is the signatures, are included in a separate part of the Bitcoin block where that is less space constrained. So if you're spending from a SegWit address, that means you can provide a SegWit signature. You can provide a signature that gets stored in this less space constrained part of the block, and so it doesn't take up as much of the scarcer space. So the miners are more willing to include it, essentially. So it all comes down to where you're placing the signature. Wrapped SegWit, I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe the reason it isn't quite as efficient as native SegWit is because it has to include a few more instructions, which is part of the witness data, before it directs kind of the instructions down to the signature in the witness data. But yeah, it's basically where the signature goes.
Okay. Now, as far as other methods that people could use to save on fees, I'm talking mostly main chain. Mm-hmm. Are there any that pop out to you that would be a good practice for people to utilize?
Sure. I mean, yeah. So there are kind of three main things you can do. The first is, as we said, use SegWit. The second thing you can do is, I should say four things. The second thing you do is choose when to time your transaction. So this, I guess, will probably lead into a conversation later that we're going to later on. But there is less traffic on weekends because people aren't working. Like pretty regularly, traffic picks up, office hours, New York City time. There's always, tons of transactions hit the network and then they have to bid against each other. So if you're sending transactions on the weekend, you can probably include a very low fee and they will get included pretty quickly these days. There are periods when you do see a couple of weeks where the backlog doesn't clear, but in general, cheaper fees on the weekends, cheaper fees in evenings, North America time. The other thing you can do is there are two more methods called replace by fee and child pays or parent. And these are ways to speed along transactions that are kind of stuck. Child pays or parent, I guess, it's a bit more advanced. Where you have a transaction that hasn't been confirmed yet. And if you spend from that transaction, including a higher fee, miners will be more willing to include the first one because they can see if they include the first low fee transaction, they'll also get to include this, juicy higher fee transaction, which spends from it. And then replace by fee is probably your best bet, provided your wallet supports it. You do want to have a wallet that supports replace by fee. So what that is, let's say you broadcast a transaction and you're expecting to go through in an hour or two. So you pay, 10 Satoshis per V-byte. And then suddenly traffic spikes in the network and it's in this like big backlog and it's probably not going to confirm the next day, but you need it confirmed sooner. Replace by fee is a method where your wallet will rebroadcast the transaction again with a higher fee. So if your wallet supports this, then you basically go in with Blockstream Green, you just find the unconfirmed transaction. There's a button that says increased fee. You choose how many fees you actually want to pay, and then it sends that again with a higher fee. Now, that's actually a useful strategy, especially if something that's not too urgent, but let's say it needs to get confirmed the next day or two, and you're not sure. You think maybe the mempool, you think maybe the backlog will clear in the evening or not. You can start by broadcasting a very, very low fee transaction, and then if it doesn't clear over time, you can just gradually increase the fee until it, and if it suddenly becomes urgent, you can increase the fee quite a bit later. So like for the average user, I strongly recommend, use a wallet that supports SegWit, use a wallet that supports replace by fee. Check out that whatthefee.io website. It's pretty good. And it's very simple. It's just a little graph. And then, lowball your fees and gradually increase with replace by fee.
Awesome. Cool. Now, obviously, there are solutions for if you're in need of either small transactions that are very quick. There's second layer solutions, or I guess layer 1.5 solutions in the case of Liquid. So there's Lightning and Liquid, and that can kind of help theoretically alleviate some of the congestion on chain. Now, how do you see this having played out so far? Do you see it helping at all with on-chain, or do you think that we just haven't gotten to that point where it's super necessary for people to be using these things?
That's a good question. I mean, it's hard to say with Lightning because the data isn't public, so we don't have, like with Bitcoin, you can see precisely how, like what the transaction activity is. All that data is public. With Lightning, it isn't as public. If two people have a channel, for all we know, they've made hundreds of transactions between each other. They might have made none. So it's a bit hard to say. I I mean, my personal guess would be most people who are using Lightning are doing it for. I mean, I think a lot of people use it because it's interesting and fun, and the instant confirmation is quite handy. For saving on fees, yeah, I mean, it might be having a benefit. I think like long term, uh, I mean, I have no idea, to be honest. This is kind of a short answer. I think I remember seeing some data from a year or two ago. I'm not sure if it's still relevant, but that an extremely large proportion of transactions on the Bitcoin network were between custodians, between exchanges. And until they've got quite an infrastructure of Lightning payments between them, which I think is a long ways away. There are some challenges with that since Lightning is better for smaller payments. I would expect that it probably hasn't had a massively negative effect on fees. From a personal user standpoint, it's pretty handy. If you're going to be making regular payments of under $100 or $200, I think it's very worth your time to open up a couple Lightning channels. We've been using it on the Blockstream store for, I think we were one of the first stores online to accept Lightning payments. And
actually, I bought stickers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's. Yeah. Well, we had the one. I got Lightning working, and but all I got was this sticker. I think that's probably one of people's most popular purchases once they get it going.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so people really seem to prefer it for things like that for retail. I long term, I mean, and this maybe will tie into stuff we'll get into later. I think that Lightning will ultimately drive up fees on the main chain because it kind of increases the value of what you can get done in a transaction. If you can spend a transaction to open up a Lightning channel and make hundreds of transactions with that, you're gonna be willing to pay a lot more for that transaction on chain. But yeah, I guess that's kind of a separate question of whether or not it's been beneficial today in terms of reducing fees on chain.
Yeah, let's dive down that now. So again, the initial reason I messaged you was because of a conversation that was kind of going on Twitter, and it had to do with the mempool seemingly filling up pretty regularly now. It doesn't clear nearly as often as it used to, and by clearing I mean the transaction backlog is effectively non-existent or within one block, and you can easily get through with a 1 Satoshi per byte transaction fee.
Well, yeah, in simplest terms, it's just if there are periods where blocks aren't full.
Yeah. And so there's a conversation going back and forth, and I'll give a shout out to Denver Bitcoin because he was involved in the conversation, and actually he tagged me and he was like, hey, this would be a good conversation to have. So it was in regards to and funny enough, before we jumped on, I was like, oh, well, you seem to be of the opinion that a fee market will develop, and you said, well, I mean, not necessarily. Like you're not necessarily.
I'm optimistic. I just don't think it's a foregone conclusion as many other people do.
Okay. Yeah. So what he was getting at was he believes, at least my understanding, hopefully I'm not misquoting him here, but as I was reading through the thread, it seemed that he believed that in an instance where fees became prohibitively expensive on chain for extended periods of time, it would drive people to second layer solutions like Lightning, like Liquid, or whatever else, or maybe even custodians. And in turn, because of people being driven out to other options, it would give relief to on-chain fees, thus kind of hitting an equilibrium, allowing the mempool to eventually clear again, and that cycle would kind of repeat. That was my understanding of it. Now, I don't know, what is your position on if a fee market will develop, if we'll get to a point where 1 sat per byte just no longer clears?
Okay, first I want to just make a comment on terminology about something that really triggers me. I hate the phrase fee market. Like, it should be called the block space market, because you're bidding for block space. That's what the demand is for. And just I'm like the lone man trying to fight this battle, but we shouldn't be calling it a fee market. It's called the block space market. Yeah, I mean, if you're new to this topic, a lot of people use the term fee market. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question. You're asking like like how convincing I find his argument?
Well, I think just in general for yourself, do you believe that a fee market will, or a
What?
block space. Redo. Do you believe that a block space market will eventually develop to the point where one Satoshi per byte, where we get to a point where transactions with 1 sat per byte will just feasibly never clear again? Do you think we'll get to that point?
Yeah. Not only do I think we'll get to that point, I think that if we don't get to that point, Bitcoin is kind of screwed, because we have this, like right now the security is like the security budget, I guess some people refer to it as just the reward for miners to continue producing blocks is provided by newly minted Bitcoin. And every 4 years, that gets cut in half, and eventually that reaches a negligible amount. And at that point in time, we need to have fees supply a sufficient reward for the miners to provide security for the network. And if that does not happen, then the security model starts to break down. So I am quite optimistic that we will get to the point where 1 Satoshi per byte fees don't confirm because there's just too much demand. And I also think that's a very, very good thing. It's a really, really important that we get a robust block space market developing. Yeah.
A quick question. Okay, I can't do the mental math right now. Maybe you might be able to tell me. If everybody in a single block that was full paid 1 sat per byte, and there are kind of average size transactions, how many sats roughly would that be for a miner if the block
Okay.
was...
So, I mean, if it's full, let's say 2 megabytes. I mean, it might be 2.3, but let's say 2 megabytes. So that should be 2 billion bytes, right? So 1 Satoshi per byte, it's 2,000 Satoshis. So that's 0.02 BTC, which is, not enough. We're going to need more than that.
Well, I guess it's a question of the purchasing power of those sats, correct? Not necessarily the dollar value of said sats.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, if the dollar value goes up such that becomes a significant amount, then you also have a situation where there's a greater incentive for either state actors or kind of very powerful institutions that maybe have reasons to want to take down Bitcoin. The incentive kind of grows. If Bitcoin becomes so valuable that 1 Satoshi per byte is actually worth ends up being worth costing you $10 to send a transaction, in that kind of situation, we're going to need more security. Although that's a good point. Like maybe I shouldn't talk about 1 Satoshi per byte. I think more precisely what I'm talking about is we need to get to a point where we don't have empty blocks. If we get to a point where actually 1 Satoshi per byte is quite expensive, and maybe there's demand for 0.5 Satoshi per byte transactions, then the protocol will probably be upgraded. Remember, the fact that there's 1 Satoshi per byte as a minimum fee is not actually part of the consensus protocol. That's just something that nodes can set themselves, and most nodes do not broadcast transactions that are greater than 0.1 Satoshi per byte. It's kind of a spam prevention mechanism. But there's no reason, let's say we get to a future where, a whole bunch of, there's empty blocks and a bunch of people want to pay, 0.02 Satoshis per byte. The nodes will probably just upgrade, so that they allow those transactions to go through. Interesting, we already did this on Liquid. We right now you can broadcast transactions that are 0.1 Satoshis per V-byte.
Interesting. So yeah, I guess when I kind of look at the argument of off-chain will lessen demand for on-chain transactions and kind of constantly strike that equilibrium. I also kind of think that there's a lot of potential for value to flow onto the Bitcoin main chain. And as you were kind of alluding to, that a single on-chain transaction can be representative of millions of off-chain transactions, and thus paying, a large number of Satoshis per byte to get that transaction established, especially when you get into the realm eventually, potentially, of not only large corporations, but potentially nation states settling this way down the road, than them paying 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 sats per byte or more to settle, cross-border payments for nation states. Then it becomes like, well, sure, whatever, we're settling billions of dollars.
Like if you're sending a transaction for $100 million, you do not care whether or not you're paying like 10 cents or $200 to get that confirmed. It's nothing compared to the overall size.
Yeah. And so do you see it eventually getting to the point where, $100 transaction is never done on the base chain ever again?
Ooh, yeah, I think it's plausible. I mean, like, a question like that requires you to see like several decades out in the future. And, to be honest, like, that's multiple times the age that Bitcoin is right now. So it's really hard to say. I'm going to go back to the original and just like describe the idea I was trying to convey in that tweet, because it might make this a bit clearer. So there were kind of two tweets I put out. One, I just looked at the data from Bitcoin's backlog over the past 6 months. There's a great site. I should give you a link for it. It's Jochen-Honig. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Send me it and I'll put it in.
And you can go there and it just shows like how many transactions are in the backlog, what fees they're paying, right? And I looked at the data over the last 6 months, and it was really cool. You could see where the weekends were, because the mempool would clear, or if it was a big spike, it would kind of partially clear. And you could just kind of see where each weekend was. And every Monday, there was a spike in traffic. I thought that was kind of cool. And I kind of already, I went looking for this. I figured it was going to be there because the way I use Bitcoin right now, I almost never need to send a transaction that needs to be confirmed day of. So I have always been sending like, one Satoshi per VBAT transactions. And I'm like, all right, well, it'll confirm on the weekend if it doesn't confirm today, And and it was kind of cool. You could see this in the data. You could just see where the Sundays and Mondays were. So I tweeted this out, and then I was thinking about this more. And like another thing that happens is a lot of you'll see companies are starting to realize this. Like some companies will do UTXO consolidation. So if there's like an exchange, for example, that has received a whole bunch of tiny little deposits, what they'll sometimes do is they'll create like really, really big transactions, spending all of these small deposits into like a bigger one. And they just broadcast this at like the lowest fee possible, 1 Satoshi per byte, and they just wait for the mempool to clear, and then that gets consolidated, because then if they never need to spend a bunch of that money at once quickly, it's only in one UTXO to spend from instead of many, so it'll be cheaper then. And that's just one example of how people can say, okay, well, I'm going to use, because I know the 1 Satoshi per byte, because I know the backlog is going to clear eventually, I can broadcast this type of transaction, take advantage of that later. And I think over time, we're going to see more and more companies and entities taking advantage of this, because it's just a really good deal. Getting like, if you just think about what block space is, you get data stored for like on the most robust database on Earth for like a few cents. That's crazy, And if you're, most states can be doing payments, but you can also, take advantage of it to, I don't know, like, mix your coins, for example, do coin joins if that's, you need to do, if that's not urgent. You can do it to, consolidate UTXOs, like I was saying. And so I think that like, there's a tremendous amount of value just being left on the table when blocks are empty. And over time, as the Bitcoin ecosystem grows and more players get involved, that'll become recognized. And there's going to be like just a massive line of people who would love to get transactions confirmed for 1 Satoshi per byte that they're not in a hurry to do. And I don't think there's anything that Lightning can do to change that. Because I mean, what I'm talking about, I think that if like, we'll only see this for a few more years, mempools clearing regularly. It's not because I think that like in a few years everybody's going to like do their online shopping on the weekends. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that it's just there's going to be a lot of non-urgent stuff that people are content waiting for and saving money on doing. And so that's what I meant specifically when it comes to backlogs or cleared backlogs becoming a thing of the past.
How do you think so? if we were to see another mania like 2017, like I recall, things have improved a lot for wallets since then. I remember near the peak in 2017, sending a transaction. I think I paid like $100 for a transaction fee, and there was no way to change the sats per byte or anything, just because the wallets didn't even. Some of the wallets just didn't even bother with that. They would just by default pay the maximum fee to get it through quick because they didn't want to deal with customer service.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's changed quite a bit. Now there are still some wallets that either minimize those types of options and settings, or have very, very poor fee estimation,
Right.
or have, and I think we both know who I'm talking about, but have neglected to even bother implementing SegWit, even just wrap SegWit. Like,
yeah,
yeah. And so do you see us even potentially, like, let's say in the next 18 months, we went through another 2017. Does the influx of new people then in that environment price out many regular type small transactions for people? Like if somebody goes and buys $100 on an exchange and they want to withdraw, and that exchange or that wallet perhaps doesn't have SegWit, or does they don't do batching, things like that. How quickly can these companies pivot around stuff like that? Like what does an environment like that look like? Do you see?
Okay. Well, I mean, okay. So I've never worked at an exchange, so it's hard for me to comment on how quickly they can do that. But I would imagine that if there's a massive bull run, they've got tons of fire that they're always putting out. So I would expect that the exchanges that get their shit in order in advance are going to do better, because if you're dealing with like, a bull run and tons of people trying to sign up, yeah, you're not gonna have a lot of time to spend on like, implementing SegWit then. So I strongly recommend, and exchanges are listening, start doing this stuff now. Over time, what I think will eventually happen is what's happening is if you're a service, if you're a wallet provider or an exchange, and you don't provide people options and you just like have them broadcast to ISP so you don't deal with customer service, like you're essentially passing on this cost to your customer. And over time, the market should favor services and wallets that allow people to save money on fees. I mean, we get people complaining to us about like why they had to pay us such a big fee on wallets. And I'm like, and I have to tell them, like, we don't actually collect fees for this. We are trying to minimize these for you. Like, here are options how to do it. And I would imagine that's got to be even worse for, companies that just automatically broadcast a high fee. So yeah, I think over time there should eventually be market pressure towards services that are better about this kind of thing. There's a tremendous amount of stuff they can do. They can use SegWit, which more of them are starting to. They can use batching, which is like if you're an exchange and you have to issue like 100 withdrawals, do them all in a single transaction instead of doing them all individually. You'll save space like that. There's even like Jeremy Rubin is working on a protocol upgrade to Bitcoin called, I think it was called Secure the Bag. I think it's called something else now. Check. So no, I forgot what it's called. Yeah, it was called Op Secure the Bag. It's basically a way that you can kind of divide transactions into two pieces and get the more urgent part broadcasted sooner, and then get the less urgent part broadcast or confirmed later on when transaction fees are low. And so all of these are essentially methods where, back in 2017, we saw these massive spikes in fees. And these are all methods for kind of reducing the size of those spikes and evening them out over time. If you, UTXO consolidation, which I mentioned earlier, which is something, these services can do to take advantage of low fees. That essentially is moving transaction space from periods of high traffic to periods of low traffic. So it's evening out these big spikes. And there's kind of two effects there. One is that given the same rate of traffic, if you didn't have these limitations, that means there'll be lower fees during the spikes, but it also means that there will be reduced periods of eliminated backlog because more of these transactions are moving to the less busy time period. Yes, there are all sorts of things they can do. I mean, as a customer, just demand more tools for this stuff. I would expect there are good reasons even beyond just customer service, because I haven't found an exchange yet that lets me choose my that lets me choose my transaction fee for withdrawal, which really annoys me. Look, I don't care if it takes a week. I just want to pay like a few cents instead of like $7 to withdraw, and they won't do it. But
it's bad when
demand it.
So that I and it's bad on in both aspects. So there's a few different, like here in Canada, there's a number of different exchanges, but some are still eating the fee when they send out a transaction. Which
God bless them.
Oh man, I don't know how
who does that?
ShakePay and Bull Bitcoin still do that.
Oh, Bull Bitcoin. Oh yeah, I forgot.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to be sustainable. And
I don't think it will be.
Yeah. And so if it's not, then the option to set your fee upon withdrawal will be necessary, as well as, honestly, I don't see how exchanges can't eventually offer like lightning withdrawals, things like that. Like I feel like that's going to have to be an option for people that want to do a $50 buy and then withdraw it to custody. Like I feel like that's an eventuality that everybody's going to have to deal with. But then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you do have the exchanges that, well, obviously don't give an option for your fee, because like you said, I haven't seen anybody do that yet. But then on top of that, they set the fee so high that it's, even in times like, it's just a default static amount of Bitcoin. Yeah. And like I've seen ones that were like 0.001, which are like, in Canada, that's like $15 to withdraw. And so, and like, and Bitcoin's only, like Bitcoin is half of its previous all-time high right now. Well, a little bit more, but still, like, so that goes up to what, eventually $30, 20 something in the US. If we get even just back to the level of, and if we had another run or something, you see 100K Bitcoin, you're $150 to withdraw or something like that. If they
it's not sustainable. Yeah. They'll have to adjust. I mean, like over time, the market should favor services that actually build proper tools for this. I mean, ideally, you want to do batching. You want to let the customer choose the fees to withdraw. I'm gonna take the opportunity to show Liquid. I think more exchanges integrating Liquid is gonna be great, especially if you're doing custodian to custodian transactions. Like if you are sending funds from one exchange to another, fundamentally there's no real reason you need to use the Bitcoin base layer for that, because when you're using the Bitcoin base layer, like you're paying for a service that lets you transact trustlessly. You don't need to you're paying to have your transaction recorded for all time, right? If you're sending from one custodian to another, Liquid's a great option for that. Like we don't actually encourage people to use it for like everyday payments. Like you can use it on your store, like especially if you just want to get familiar with it, or it's good if you want to use like a Tether, for example, is on Liquid. But if you're doing custodian transactions, Liquid is a great option. It's also like a lot faster. Transactions confirmed within less than 2 minutes every time. And so I would strongly recommend, if you want to have faster and cheaper withdrawals or movements between exchanges, ask your service to implement Liquid. We'll be happy to help them get set up.
And right now, what you've got, Bitfinex, Bitsy, what places are utilizing Liquid right now?
Like have integrated?
Yeah.
There's quite the list at this point. Here, I'll bring it up. But I know there's Bitfinex, Bitsy, I believe Huobi.
I mean, Bull Bitcoin uses Liquid.
Yeah, Bull Bitcoin uses Liquid. And who else do we have here? BISC uses it. BTC Pay Server allows you to use it. BTC Turk, and for those in Turkey, Bitsy, Coinut, GoPax, HODL, Liquidity, MarketCoin, RenRenBit, SideShift AI, The Rocket Trading, and Wire. They all provide support for Liquid in one way or another. Damn. And more coming to you soon. So
sweet. Awesome. Okay, so I want to take us down this tangent. This was kind of a random thought that I had. Maybe this will kind of be the topic that we'll get a little cosmic here, if that's okay with you.
Great.
Okay. So I was thinking about fees and limited block space, and like the reason for limited block space feasibly is obviously the economics of being able to pay miners after the block subsidy is gone, but it also has to do with latency of the network and being able to run your own node and sync with the network without constantly being behind, while also getting new information and new blocks.
Right.
And so that works all well and good, when you're on Earth and you're transacting with people. But okay, let's go a ways out. Let's get however many years, however quickly Elon Musk can work. Let's say in a situation where you have people off planet, but relatively close, like Mars, perhaps. Okay. In an instance like that, obviously the latency between the network with Earth and Mars, like you're not going to be able to sync and then keep on top of blocks and feasibly be transacting across the regular Bitcoin network peer to peer, correct?
Yeah. I love that you're asking this question. You've asked the right person. I think Peter Todd might be the correct person to ask, but I know he's done the stuff. But we actually went into this with, we had Samson Moe on our podcast last year, and we actually started talking about, interplanetary, interstellar cryptocurrencies and how they would work. And also we released an April Fool's video last year for this year for the lava network, which is, liquid network for Mars. And he actually had myself and Grubels do research into actual orbital periods and maximum or minimum broadcast time or latency between. And I believe at minimum you're going to see 4 minutes of latency between Earth and Mars, and maximum it's 12 minutes if I'm remembering correctly. So you actually can still use Bitcoin. That's actually you're just going to have an extra 12-minute delay knowing whether or not your transaction is confirmed. So that's actually
the risk of double spend there.
But that you can address that by just simply waiting an extra 12 minutes. Because the way you mediate double spends now is you wait for 6 transactions or 6 confirmations has become kind of a standard. You can still wait for 6 confirmations on Mars. It's just going to take an extra 12 minutes, when planets are furthest apart from each other, to confirm that it's been, that it's got its 6 confirmations. So it's still usable in that way. Interestingly, Lightning Network will work. You could have a Lightning Network. Mars would have to have its own separate Lightning Network, but it would function at the same, just as well as on Earth. You would just, again, need to, when you're loading and unloading or opening and closing payment channels, same thing, you just need to wait the extra 4 to 12 minutes to confirm that it's been, that transaction has been confirmed. But once you're actually good to go, a Lightning Network on Mars, because all the participants are on Mars, they can do all of their payments just as easily as they could on Earth.
Okay, wait. I'm going to toss an attack vector your way.
Sure.
And I just, you said potentially 12-minute latency between Earth and as a maximum. Right? Okay, let's say there's a set of private keys that exist simultaneously on Earth and on Mars. Somebody on Mars spends a transaction. So basically, I guess I'm kind of disproving myself at the same time. In my head, I'm like, okay, well, if somebody, there's literally no way you could accept a zero conf transaction, obviously, because technically there could be a transaction spent on Earth simultaneously as on Mars, and it would be in essence accepted both places, but the one on Earth would be confirmed first officially on the Bitcoin network, and you wouldn't see that confirmation till later. But how does that play with Lightning Network? Let's say somebody closed the channel. Wait, it would have to be a separate Lightning Network then? That's why why
the entire point of Lightning Network is that the participants have to be online and have to be able to communicate with each other essentially in real time. And that can't happen if some participants are on Earth, some participants are on Mars. So that's why I say Mars would have to have its own separate Lightning Network.
What about, so you were talking about liquid. So technically, if you were to build kind of like a federated model for like a liquid network and lock up Bitcoin on Earth, and then bring the keys to that federated model with you to whatever planet, then you could transact as long as those keys weren't duplicated on Earth before you left.
Yeah, but like, you can even have the keys duplicated on Earth. You can even have the Federation running on Earth, or I mean, okay, you wouldn't want that, but like, yeah, a side chain for each planet. I think it's a great idea. Like, because like right now, if you want to peg coins in or out of liquid, like, you know, you can exchange it using services, you know, instantly. But if you're actually for one of the larger players, pegging coins in and out takes like, I believe it's like 102 transactions or something, you know, which is the better part of a day. So an extra 12 minutes on top of that is negligible, right? But yeah, so you could run a federated network on Mars. Like the Lava network, you know, was kind of a joke, but it's not completely a joke. Like, you could actually see something like that sort of work in the future.
Feasible.
Like, now, of course, like, you know, I should put an important caveat out there. Like, you know, Liquid is a federated model. It doesn't have the same, you know, properties as Bitcoin does. It's not completely trustless. It's, you know, you do have to trust that the majority of the federation is you know, performing the duties properly. So, you know, that's not an ideal solution. If you really want trustlessness, you go with Lightning on Mars, or you just do regular Bitcoin, but you just wait an extra period of time for confirmations. But yeah.
Does it get to a point where you're too far from the base chain, like in distance, where it just becomes?
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Once you get to other stars, forget about it. Because you know, if like the nearest stars to Earth are roughly 4 light years away, you're not going to wait 4 years for a transaction to confirm. So yeah, once you get to other stars, you probably are going to want your own currency at that point. You would have to have your own chain. I guess you could
still lock up if you did a careful enough creation of a multisig for
you could do a federated chain for another star, but then you need to have your time lock for pegging coins in and out would need to be greater than the light speed distance to that place. So you'd need to have like something like more than a 4-year time lock. Yeah. And like 4 years is also assuming there's no breaks in communication between you and the home system, which I mean, I guess we're talking about a far future where we actually travel there. So who knows? Maybe we do have really reliable communication between the two. But I wouldn't count on that.
Imagine a civilization that locks up Bitcoin, even a few Bitcoin, into a federated model, travels the stars, and then because of relativity returns to Earth hundreds of years later. Bitcoin somehow has survived.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and they become the richest overrulers of the entire planet because they control so much Bitcoin independently.
Yeah, who knows, man? Like, well, also once you get into you know, really fast time travel, time will pass more slowly for people traveling at a higher speed. So you could travel for, I don't know, if you have a sufficiently fast spaceship, travel for 10 years, come back, it's been 100 years on Earth. Who knows? I guess at that point, yeah, like once you get into those distances, the fact that relativity comes into play, I haven't thought too much about that, but I would imagine that a lot of the assumptions about Bitcoin will start to break down if time passes at different speeds for different locations. Now within our solar system, you're good. Like, you know, the difference between Earth and Mars in terms of time passing is negligible, as far as I understand. But yeah, once you get to other stars, you're probably going to want your own proof of work chains.
Somebody's got to try though. Whoever wants to hop on a ship with McConaughey and and brave that black hole with a federated sidechain of Bitcoin. And I mean, what better way to hodl, right?
Yeah. We're leading the way. You saw Chris Hadfield got his Bitcoin from us, right?
I did. I know.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Canadian. Yeah, that's that. I was super stoked to see a Canadian astronaut do a Bitcoin transaction from a satellite.
Via satellite. That's right.
Yeah, incredible. Okay, I think I think after that little dive down the interstellar rabbit hole, I think I can. We can wrap it there. But Mario, I've got to say thank you so much for this. I had a lot of fun with this chat.
Yeah, man. Anytime. This is good.
It was a lot of fun. You know, I got to meet you briefly while you were checking out my own stomping grounds. So that was really cool. I'd love to run into you again at some point.
Hit me if you come to the West Coast, man.
I would love to do that. And for people that are looking, feel free to take the moment to shill, whether it be like Twitter handles, whatever you want them to check out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, related to our conversation, yeah. I mean, if you're using exchanges, you want cheaper fees, tell people you want liquid. Definitely do that. If you want to hear more of me and rants with the Bill Fodel guys and Ruben Thompson, we have an R-rated Bitcoin podcast called the Unhashed Podcast. So give us a look there. And yeah, just look up unhashedpodcast.com. That's us. And you can find me on Twitter. I am Mario_Gibney.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. And guys, be sure to check out Mario. And I will have all of these links down below so you can click them there. Thanks for being on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. If you're here on YouTube, please do hit like, subscribe, and share. All of those things really do help, so be sure to do them. If you want to help out the show in another way, you can hit up the sponsors I mentioned down below. That was LEDN for the $25 into your savings accounts if you get a loan. Check out Crypto Cloaks, code BTC Sessions, grab some swag there. And of course, the Cobo Vault, there's a link to grab that. And if you retweet the show and tag myself and Cobo, you could win one of those steel seed plates. And finally, if you really loved what you saw, you can always drop me a Bitcoin Lightning Network tip at my tippin.me page. That is tippin.me/@BTC Sessions. With that, I'm out. Have yourselves a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, wherever you are, and I'll see you next time for your daily session.